Hello. All right. I think we're just going to get started then. For clarification, I know this is nowhere near big enough of a group to require a microphone, but we do need to record this because Jonathan isn't able to make it tonight, and there's some other people who wanted to join but who couldn't. So there's a Q&A section at the end, so we might pass the mic around at then. But yeah, everybody, thank you all for coming. I know normally I would say thank you for making so much free time on a Thursday night, but I know most of you are already free Thursday night. But no, thank you for coming regardless. So this is our worship and tech training, and Jonathan called me out a couple of weeks ago as we were prepping for this, and he said, so on the email, you called it a worship cohort. What do you think cohort means? And I'm like, I don't know. I've just been to other worship training events and they called it a cohort, so I called this a cohort. But none of the actual material changed, but something that was kind of an emphasis from focusing on that word changing is actually having it be training and having it be practical. So yes, more of a clinic than a cohort. More of a gym than a cohort, I guess. If a gym is where you went to learn how to work out, but not actually work out at, the analogy falls apart. All right, so said the person who walked in with 2 things of Gatorade, and but there we go. So just some real quick things that we're just going to do a quick overview of what we're going to be going over for tonight. So first thing is we're going to be going over the scriptural reasons for why we do what we do as ministry, and that this is worship and tech. Another thing we're going to be doing is re-looking at our value statements as a team and a ministry. And we're going to be looking at the commitments associated with the Sunday service, our heart behind practice and rehearsal, and then lastly, some housekeeping stuff. And something that Jonathan pointed out that was a good thing that I almost completely forgot to talk about is why we're going over all this stuff. So we're going to be going over a lot of different topics and a lot of different sections. I promise you, this is not to call out any one person in the ministry. This is not meant to be you're doing this wrong or stop doing it. It is meant to sort of re-solidify some of the things that we have already had out here. So one of the main reasons that we're going over this again is because, we have new members on the team. So if I look out here, even though in this small group that has come tonight, most of us were not here when we originally planted the church and we went through this for the first time. So just for the sake of introducing it to new members, we just feel like it's really important to do that. The next thing is the things that we're going to be talking about tonight are not really things that we are ever really going to grow past. And just because, if we were not a worship ministry and we were just a band ministry, or if we were just a band group, maybe potentially we would outgrow some of this stuff. But a lot of the things that we're going to be going over have to do with how we relate to each other scripturally and how we pursue God as we are part of our worship ministry. And a lot of those things are just going to be things that we never really grow out of. There's never going to be a point where okay, I am perfect at compassion. Don't need to read anything about compassion. I am good. In that same way, when it comes to worship ministry, there are always going to be things that we either need to learn or relearn, or maybe something that needs to be recentered in us. But something else is choosing to make these things a priorities, and something that was echoed to me a long time ago is a value statement is only a value statement if it is valued. So yeah, that's Twitter level, but the idea of just us saying this is a value, it's really easy to say, oh, this is our value statement, or this is what we value as a church or a ministry. But if it is not made like an active priority by everybody in that ministry, then it's not really a value. It's just a wish list of what we would eventually like to be like eventually. So going over these topics, it's also reminders like, hey, these are our priorities right now. Oops. What? Apparently there's a black out the screen button. But yeah, also, I kind of already went over this, but a lot of us need to be recentered in our own ways. So again, what we're going through tonight, there isn't one specific topic. There could be something as small as, oh, I forget to put my cables away after Sunday when we practice. It could be something from that end all the way to, wow, I don't really feel like I've been acting with this heart when I've been in a team setting. And everybody is going to be on one end of the spectrum, everywhere in between. And so this is sort of an opportunity for us to re-examine where are we right now as a person and where do we need to be recentered towards. And then the last thing is the distinction between routine and exception. Well, I guess that should be exceptions, but essentially I feel like it's really important for us to distinguish what are the baseline, this is what we're aiming for every single week. These are our priorities and things that we want to make sure we're hitting every week so that it's very clear and we can be intentional about when we need to make an exception for those things. I just got off of a large diet program with my doctor, and every single health book that I've ever read is like, never say you're going to completely abstain from anything, because it's not realistic. And it's not realistic for us to say, these are the rules that we've made, and if any of you break them, you're out of the team. Like, that's not the purpose. Like, life is going to happen. People will get sick. Kids will get sick. Hopefully not that one. Especially not right now, but then keep them over there. But the goal is to say, we've had some people where they're on their way to practice, and I think it happened to Stan like a few weeks ago. He's like on his way here, and he literally pulled onto the highway, and it was just stopped for like an hour and a half. And it's happened to Jeremy. It's happened to me. So things like that are exceptional circumstances. And so we grant the exception for things like that. Having said that, the reason that those things are considered exceptions is because they are diverting from what we would consider is the norm. And so this is to reestablish what our norm should be, so that if anybody is in a scenario like that, like last week, I almost completely forgot worship was happening because of daylight savings time. And so it was like, oh shoot, and now we're going. And so these are the general reasons for why we're going over things. Also, I'm checking my slides as I go. And when we're going, if there's any one topic that I would say is going to encompass this whole night, it's going to be something that is just this statement: worship is honor. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because this is something that they brought up at the conference at, I believe, we were there a few weeks ago. Spokane. We were in Spokane at the Foursquare conference, and this was something that they talked about in their worship cohort breakout. See, there, I just called it that. But their whole framework for worship, I felt like they just broke it down really well in terms of being a part of a worship ministry is honor. In terms of practicality, it's that. We're not saying that it's nothing beyond that and there's nothing else, but in terms of like interacting with a worship ministry day to day, week to week, it does tend to break down to who are you honoring. So first we start with what is honor, and just from a dictionary definition standpoint, it's to regard with great respect, and just because I'm one of those people, I get a definition for my definition. So respect is to recognize the worth of a person or a thing. So when we say we are honoring something, or we are going to show honors to something, we are regarding it with recognition that it is worthy of, that it is worth something, essentially. And another sort of similar definition is to fulfill or keep an obligation or agreement. And so we define that because our next slide, which is this guy, so this is essentially what the point breaks down to. And if there is any one thing that I would have all of you take away from tonight, it would be this, because this is definitely the most, I would say, on a spiritual aspect, this is like the thing that is guiding worship ministry, tech ministry, pretty much most ministries. So it starts as a worship and tech team member, you guys, we are to honor first and foremost these three entities. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. It's not the Trinity, but good points, because the first one is God. So we use this as Psalm 34:1 says, "I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips." I don't think that one's a shocker to anybody, that if you're in a church, a part of a worship ministry, that part of it is honoring God with your ministry. The second one is, are we honoring the congregation? So the passage that me and Jonathan really felt drawn to was 1 Corinthians 12, 12 to 31. And I couldn't put the whole verse up there because it wouldn't fit, but it is the section where Paul is talking about being different parts of the body and different roles that one plays in the body. And my initial temptation was to use that as a very bad analogy for musicians and be like, okay, bass players, stay in your lane. And but that's not really what this is saying biblically. Essentially, Paul is addressing a church where people are in ministry, but they have a very tight fist on how they are serving in that particular role in ministry. So they're like, this is what I do. This is what I'm good at, or this is what I want to do, or this is how I want to do it. And so this is what it's going to do. And Paul is sort of coming alongside them and saying, you are a part of a body. You are part of a whole. And by definition, a part of a body needs to cooperate with the body if it's going to be effective. You are not here by yourself. You are not a single person in a role. You are a part of something larger than yourself. And so part of how that plays out in ministry is when we are in worship or in tech, we are here to be a part of the congregation as it is. Like we are not here to play every single week because we want a bunch of people to come watch us play. Like, that's not why we're here. We are here to serve the community that we are in. And then the last one is our fellow band members and tech team members. And this is sort of a continuation off of that, but we used Philippians 2:3, which is do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. Isn't it great when you know a verse by heart and then somebody reads it out loud and you're like, I know this one, and then they read from a different translation? you're just like, I know it, but still, it doesn't feel satisfying. And so, and by the way, we will have a question section at the end. So if anybody wants like clarification on any of this, we do have time for that. And the way there's going to be, wouldn't that be like the most like backhanded? I would get an F and I made the slides. The only reason I'm remembering what to say is because I'm looking at it right now. But we're now going to sort of be transitioning into how all of these principles sort of play out practically in actually being a part of worship and tech. So we're going to be going through, I debated whether or not I was going to put this one in like the housekeeping section, but I just decided it kind of rolled into some other stuff, so we're just starting here. But when we are saying accept to a planning center invite, here's what we're saying yes to, and then we're going to sort of go into why we have those things laid out that way. So first thing is when we are saying yes to a planning center invite, you are agreeing to individual practice, which is sitting down with your instrument on your own time during the week leading up to rehearsal. And later in the section, we will get into the difference between rehearsal and practice. But sitting down with individual practice is, if you were to break it down into one sentence, it would be you are spending intentional time listening to the songs so that you can learn the parts that are applicable to your instrument that you're going to be serving in on that Sunday. Or if we're translating this to tech team, it's a little harder to translate this one specifically to tech team because you're not really practicing the songs. But I would say if you're on slides, it would be listening to the songs ahead of time to see, like, do you understand how the songs flow? Like, what is the verse of a song? What is the chorus of a song, if it's something you're unfamiliar with? I wouldn't say that there's anything you can do prior to rehearsal as like a sound person. As a part of, instead of maybe like looking ahead of time to see what kind of band members you're going to have, just so you know what you're getting into that Thursday. And so the second thing you're saying yes to is a screaming Matthew. And I'm sorry, that wasn't a scream. That was a concerned yell. But yeah, so we're saying yes to a Thursday rehearsal. And the difference between, this is something that Jonathan said at Northwest so long ago. I've quoted him so many times. I don't think I've actually attributed it to him anytime I've said it. But practice is where you learn your parts, and rehearsal is where you learn everyone else's part. So that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with serving the congregation and honoring your other band members, where it's when you are learning your part ahead of time, it is, I'm learning what I need to know to best prepare for my time showing up to a rehearsal. And then Thursday rehearsal, we've tried to get more intentional about not calling Thursday a practice, because we don't want Thursday to be the point where people are learning what they're supposed to be doing, if that makes sense. Like, by Thursday, you should already have some semblance of what you are going to be doing, what your part is. You should have already spent individual time practicing by yourself. And rehearsal on Thursday is where you take those parts that you've been practicing during the week and you see, okay, how does this fit in the context of the band that is going to be playing this Sunday? And Thursday rehearsal is like that first initial meetup where you say, oh, I was practicing my song this way, but because we have no other guitar players, I might need to change what I'm doing. Or I thought somebody else was taking that lead line, or I thought the piano was going to be doing this, or I thought the we were going to be doing the arrangement off the recording where we build up here, and I guess we're not doing that here. So it's learning what the band is going to be doing for that Sunday. And then there we go. And third is, not surprising, Sunday rehearsal. So that is 8:30 a.m. This was one that I was super cautious about whether or not I wanted to word this way, but I really felt like this was like the most succinct way of saying it. If you are unable to say yes to any of these three things for any given Sunday that you're invited to, reconsider whether or not you are going to hit accept, because all of these have a very specific reason for existing, and if they did not need to be here, we would not have them as a part of our routine or what we expect of volunteers. So it genuinely, like, and when I say this, I'm not saying it to be like, you know, if you can't be on Thursday, you know, you're a bad musician and you shouldn't be here, or you're not allowed. Like, that's not the point. The point is saying that there's a value in every one of those steps for you, for the team that you're going to be playing with or serving with that week, and that value is lessened when you're not able to make that. And so there have been a couple of people who've said, you know what, I'm not exactly. But I've had some conversations with people where they're like, you know what, my Thursday is booked up for the next 3 months. And I'm like, okay, well then let's re-examine getting you back on the schedule after that 3-month period. They're not being punished for not doing it. It's simply, this is a important part of how we prepare for a Sunday. So we want to make sure that that is being, again, made a priority, and this is one of our values. And it wouldn't be very valuable if we just said, Thursday isn't important. And so I know. All right. And then we are going to go over some quick housekeeping things. These are going to be more like very straightforward. It's going to be less like overarching principles. And they're just some things to consider. And again, the three things we're looking at: we're honoring God, we're honoring our congregation, and we're honoring each other as a ministry. So every single one of these items, it's not here to be like, oh, here's a rule you have to follow. It is, everything that is on here is for your benefit and the benefit of everyone else on your team, so that things function as smoothly as they can. Also, another thing to keep in mind is, you know, even though some people might look at our worship ministry and be like, oh, it's a small church worship ministry, which, by the way, ignore people who say that, because this is an awesome ministry and it's like doubled from what it was when we started like 2 years ago. But realistically, we might have, now that the building is opening up there, it's very likely that we might have some growth in terms of numbers or ministry, or Jonathan has even nothing is manifested out of it, but there have been a couple of conversations that have happened with other churches potentially using this building or renting it out for other things. So when we're talking over these housekeeping things, it's not just for the benefit of us. And it's really easy to say like, oh, it's just us, it's just a group. You know, what does it matter if I leave my headphones there? They're plugged in all the time. I'm the only one who uses them. Like, that works for now. And I'm not even saying that it doesn't work right now, but long term, taking care of the space that we are in, making sure things are prepared for other people who might be coming in, and making sure things just look good for the congregation. We're just going to ask that you follow along and I wish I had more extensive words right now, but I went through a long day of, all right, so my job requires a lot of talking. So when there's an event where I have to do a lot of talking at the end of the day, it's like, it gets pretty raw. So please excuse that. But one of the first things that's just a housekeeping detail is we expect that if you're on the list to like serve in worship or tech, that you respond to all planning center invitations that are sent to you. And now here's I'm not saying accept every planning center invitation that is sent to you, but merely that in some form, whether it is a I don't know, like a private message to whoever sent it to you, like I'm not sure yet, or a no, I know that I can't do it, just so we can get some kind of response. Because at that point, you're honoring the person in administration for that week, and you're also respecting and honoring whoever a potential replacement might be. I used to be the person when I was like on youth bands where it's like, oh, I don't want to say no to them because if I say no, that feels like I'm being mean to them. And I used to feel that way until somebody explained to me, it's like, hey, when we have something on Thursday and you don't actually say decline till Wednesday, whoever is in charge that week, they now have like one day to try to find somebody else to fill in that role. And so now not only does that person only have one day to fill in that role, whoever is going to be filling in your role, max only has one day to prepare to fill in for your role. And so that's where it gets even more difficult. And so all of that can be avoided if it's just, regardless of whether, if you're not getting notifications or if you're not receiving planning center invites, please talk to me because you should be receiving them. But just sort of make it a habit that whenever you receive an invite, at some point respond to it, because the worst, it doesn't really feel fun when you go through this process and then up to like 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. on a Thursday night, you're not sure if somebody is going to show up. And so that has happened a few times. And so for the respective people who are like on that team and who are in charge of administration stuff that week, we just ask that if you get an invite, just in some way respond to it. The next thing is going to be with call times. And so this is specifically for worship and tech in terms of Thursdays and Sundays. So the definition of a call time is the time the cast and crew of a production need to be on set ready to work. And the key thing to notice there is it says ready to work. So in other words, call time is not when you show up. Call time is when you need to be ready by. So super simple way to think of it is we have a call time at 7 p.m. on Thursday nights, and we have a call time on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. So if I'm playing acoustic guitar that week, and I know that it normally takes me like 15 minutes-ish to get my stuff set up, that means I need to show up before 8:30 so that I have enough time to set up everything that I need to set up so that when 8:30 hits, we're ready to go. We can start practice. And sometimes it can be a little bit loosey-goosey on Thursday nights because it's the evening, whatever, it's the end of the day. But like on Sunday mornings, people really feel it when people are showing up, like even like 5 minutes late, or showing up at call time, because now that's time that the way that it was described to me when I was in worship training is, if I'm let's say 5 minutes late to the call time, and instead of showing up at 8:30, I show up at 8:35. And let's say that I have a really easy instrument to set up. So So let's say it takes like 3 minutes to set up. Well, now that I've done that, I've now taken 8 minutes away from everybody else who showed up on time. And so it's like multiply that 8 minutes by whoever else is in the room. And that's the amount of like minutes that have been kind of wasted. And again, we're not talking about the exceptions. We're not talking about people who life happens and things just happen. We're talking about when this is a repeated thing and people's time is not being valued. So all we ask is that if you know that you are going to be on worship or tech, that you know how much time do you need to prep and set up and show up ahead of time so that you're able to show up. And this goes for slides and for sound as well. Sound might even need to show up a little bit earlier because a lot of your technical setup involves helping people with their technical setups. So you might want to give a little bit extra time because turning on the board takes like 2 seconds. So it's really easy to set up for your side. But yeah, we just like having everything ready to go so that we're honoring people's time and honoring other people's preparations. So the next thing to go over for housekeeping is pre-rehearsal and service setup. It is not clicking anymore. Literally just replaced them. Okay, well now it's all there. Or did I like duplicate slides or something? No, it's just being weird. Okay, now it's just doing one big chunk. So some pre-rehearsal service housekeeping things. It's important to have like a base knowledge of how to set up for whatever role you are going to be doing on that Sunday. The one that everybody kind of needs to know is headphones. Just because regardless of what instrument you're playing, if you're on this stage, you're probably going to need headphones, and not probably, you are going to need headphones, and you need to know how to set them up. So and we're going to go through, again, this is just text. So if any of this does not track or afterwards you're just like, I still don't know what you're talking about, come up to me afterwards so that we can like show you how to do it. Because the main reason why we're going over this is not, don't bother us, set up your own cables. It's we want to make sure that you are equipped to do what you need to do for the ministry role that you're in. And for example, like there might be a situation where you need to show up and set up your setup, and a person who knows how to set it up for you isn't there that week. So, and again, none of this stuff is super complicated, but it's just important to know, like, okay, if I am on vocals or if I am on guitar, or if I need to set up my own headphones, this is how I do it. So with headphones, it just starts with having your own in-ears or headphones, getting some of the adapters from the closet over there on the side, connecting your headphone into the larger plug, and then plugging that either into these 4 channels on the rack over here or those 4 channels over there in the pocket that have like the little red tab on them. Yes, and notify us if things are starting to disappear, like headphone adapters or things like that. We had a scary thing happen, I think like a couple months ago, where we showed up and like all of the adapter cables were gone or misplaced or something like that. So if you cannot find the things needed for you to set up your headphones, let us know. The next thing is for vocalists. So you are going to be setting up your headphones, and then you are going to be setting up for vocals is kind of a weird thing because most of the time, you're going to have either this lead mic or a background mic already set up. But we do have a decent amount of vocalists now for worship, so you might need to set up a third mic, which essentially just involves grabbing one of the spare mics that we have, which will be back in the sound booth. You can ask the sound guy for one. And then grabbing an XLR cable from over here in the closet. And just to reiterate, XLRs are the ones that look like this. It's not the long pointy one. You'll look into it. There are three little holes on one end, 3 little pokey things on the other end, and a button to go in and out. Trying to do it with one hand is not advised. But so that's how vocalists will set up. Guitarists and bass players and auxiliary people, you're either, John's a little different because sometimes he uses flutes, and so he'll set up a microphone like that. But for most of you, again, most of the stuff that's going to be set up is set up on stage already, so you don't need to worry about it too much. But just in case you do, you guys are going to take your guitar cable and you're going to be plugging it into a DI box of some kind. If you cannot find a DI box anywhere that is not being used, again, ask the sound guy where you can find one. And out of that DI box, you're going to go out into one of the inputs over here. And so when you plug it in, there's going to be a number for that input. So be sure to remember that number so you can tell the sound person, this is what channel I'm plugged into, because that will make his job a lot easier, he or she. We don't know if we have any potential future female sound people, but we're still in Washington. And then for drums, I mean, if you come in on a Sunday and the drums are like not set up, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're just like, well, I guess I'm off this Sunday. But like with keys and drums, I mean, on some level, these should just be kind of set up whenever you show up. If they are not, that is a sign to talk to somebody who is in charge because, these guys, we're talking about building another cage for that. So it should hopefully not be going anywhere. But that's what that looks like. And then some post-service cleanup rules. And this is, so the main thing I wanted you guys to take away is the 3 honors. You know, honor God, honor the congregation, and honor the other people on the team. This, I would say, is the second thing that I would want you to take away, is this general rule. If you had to get something out for this Sunday in terms of like cables or gear or anything like that, put it away unless told otherwise. And so what that means is if you had to get like a cable out of the closet or some extra DI or some music stand from, we don't really have a clean space to put music stands, so right now we're just kind of like putting them off to the side over here when we're not using them. So if you had to move any of those things from those spaces for that Sunday, you are responsible for putting it away after the fact. So like I said, this just goes for all sort of cables, headphones, adapters. There's a laser pointer, but it doesn't show up on the TV. But all of it, most of it goes in the closet pegboard. I feel like we're still trying to keep the DIs up in the booth because there's a lot of dust in that cabinet that can kind of ruin the DIs, so we don't want them in there. But again, this is sort of like, also, if you bring your own like physical sheet music to a service, be sure that you are discarding it after the fact. There's been a couple of cases where like people will bring their sheet music like this. Even Pastor Jonathan is no excuse. But like, and it just, again, it just happens. Like, it's like a thing when I was in drama theater, it's like the second you're done with the play run, you forget your lines immediately. The second you're done with the set, it's really easy to forget that you printed out a bunch of sheet music and that it's still on the stand. But we just ask that if you bring something on the stage that Sunday, that you be responsible for putting it away or throwing it away or discarding it as well. And again, this is just to make things, it's a way to be kinder to the building. It's a way to like keep things tidier, looking for the congregation, but also it's just kind of nice for the other people who are going to be coming up on the stage next. Like, I believe most of us as musicians can attest to, it's really nice when you show up to play something and everything is really nice and neatly put away, and you just need to like get out the couple of things that you need to use, and then you're good and ready to go. And it is a nightmare when there is like a nest of cables or a bunch of spare microphones laying around and you have to like start your rehearsal by putting away all of the things that didn't get put away at the end of last service. So just as a way to be kind to everybody, we just ask that if you've gotten something out for a service, that you then also put it away after the fact. So this is, I would say, probably the one that is, I need to stop saying this is the most important point, because I can't say that like 4 times. But it's very important to, I'll assume that it was funny because it was coming from Jeremy, but so I'm going to be honest, I'm so brain dead I didn't get the joke. Now I want to know, but no, okay. Okay. Wow, you didn't even like make a reference to something earlier. You referenced what I just said. Okay. If you needed a sign that we're going to be wrapping up soon, I'm tired. So, but yeah, the definition for practice is intentional time where, wow, I just realized my definition of practice used the word practice. Essentially, it is you spending time, intentional time prior to rehearsal so that you can better equip yourself for the rehearsal that's going to be happening. So something that I have here that is, again, one of those very bluntly stated ones. This is not optional, regardless of position or instrument. If you have accepted an invite to play on that Sunday, you have agreed to practicing by yourself prior to rehearsal. And again, another very blunt one. Musicians who don't practice don't get scheduled for Sunday. And this is not meant to be like a mean-spirited thing. It is a way to expand on what we talked about with honoring God, honoring our congregation, and honoring our other musicians. So it is incentive, but it's also like, going back, this is our value statement of we're not content on a spiritual level. I don't know if I have these slides in here somewhere, but I'll just go into it. So on the reason that we're doing practice, actually, no, I do have it on a separate slide. So one quick thing before we leave this one is when we say we expect practice, we're not saying like you need to have the songs memorized. We're not expecting that in any way. We have, when we've started at the very, very beginning of this church, me and Jonathan had a conversation. It's like, do we want to have no music stands? Because both of us have served in churches where that was an expectation that was put on their musicians, and we were both like, no, we do not want that, because we don't feel like that is helpful for this congregation, this group of musicians. We don't feel like putting that kind of expectation is actually helpful. The desire is, actually, I didn't mean to put that there, so we will just pretend like I didn't put it there. But yeah, so when we go into this, we're not saying you need 100% preparation. What we're saying is that prior to rehearsal, that some time is set aside for you to listen to the songs, and work on things that are relevant to your instrument. Later on these slides, we actually go into, like, for your instrument, what are some helpful things to look at. But one thing that we've actually run into a couple times is a couple people, not in this church or this ministry ever before, in other situations, people being like, well, why does it matter if I practice or not? And normally, all right, I'll just say it. It came from, like, a lot of, like, youth kids who were really talented musicians, and they're just like, well, why do I need to practice? And, you know, I'm like, I can figure it out by ear just before we show up. And it's like, okay, yes, I'm sure that you can, but there's some spiritual reasons why we say we're not doing that. And the first one is we're honoring God. So something that I probably quote every time we're bringing on somebody into ministry, we're talking about the difference between excellence versus performance. And the difference is, one of them is based off of the individual and based off of what is the best that you have, almost like the lady giving Jesus the coin and saying, this is what I have. This is all I have, but it's yours. Versus when you're going through the Cain and Abel story, and Jesus was not, when it says God was pleased with Abel's sacrifice, it wasn't that Cain gave fruit and Abel gave meat, therefore God was happier with Abel's sacrifice. It was Abel gave his best. He gave a spotless lamb. He gave the very best that he had to give to God. And Cain just kind of gave what he found along the way. Like, there was no intentionality put into, I'm going to bring my best forward to God. It was just, I will give him some fruit so that I can meet the quota of having offered a sacrifice. And so it's more of an issue of the heart than actual performance. And so when we're talking about honoring God in practice, like, for some, we've gone through this before with some people who were in sort of like an early development stage, but there was, like, a kid I was teaching guitar to in youth group, and his like excellence, his step of excellence was playing a G chord and nailing the G chord. And that was it. And just playing the first, like, top 3 notes for a song that we were playing, and just playing with the band and getting over his stage fright. And that was excellence for him. And obviously we were like, if you're looking at it purely on a musical level, you're just like, oh, well, that's not that impressive. He should have been playing all the chords. But it's like, this is somebody who was enhancing worship because what we'd arranged something so that what he was playing worked with the band, but also he was prepared as much as he could be as somebody who was a beginning guitar player. And so he was honoring God, he was honoring the congregation, and he was trying to, like, listen to the band and, like, take feedback on stuff. And we honor that more than somebody who's willing to solo willy-nilly and technically stay in key. That's probably a bad example because I was thinking of a jazz musician, but that doesn't. But I feel like the sentiment is there. But also, we're doing practice prior to rehearsal because it's honoring the congregation. And the matter of the fact is, what we play does have an effect on the congregation. And as a worship team and a ministry, we are all acting not as individual players on the stage or not an individual person in the booth. We are acting as the body. We are fulfilling multiple needs, multiple roles for the sake of the congregation. And so when we are practicing prior to rehearsal, it allows us to actually spend time to find the things that are going to best serve the congregation. So, David has been really good about, like, looking at like, all right, what are the drum parts for this song prior to rehearsal? And it's made like such a huge, like even just in like a little bit that you've been playing with us, I've seen like huge improvement. But just because it's very clear, you're like, I'm going to listen to this and be like, okay, this is a quiet verse, and then it's building here in the pre-chorus, and then there's a big chorus. And just that little bit, it's not just musically we're playing it better. Like the congregation feels that, and people are really honored by that. And then the third reason that we're practicing is to honor each other, sort of similar to the larger picture of ministry. You are not a single musician up here playing by yourself. You are a part of a larger arrangement, and what you play on your instrument doesn't just affect the congregation, but it also affects the musicians playing around you. If I am playing the bass 3 octaves up, and that's the only place I play, that's not just me playing something. That is affecting the other musicians that I'm with, because now I am not actually fulfilling the role of a bass in a band. And so when we're practicing, we're not just saying, let's learn some parts and cross off all these. It's so that we can respect each other when we get onto the stage, because something that I remember this distinctly. I got pulled in to play bass for a worship thing at Northwest's youth group, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna do my diligence, and I like prepared, and I spent not an insane amount of practice time. It was like 30 minutes, but it's just like, okay, let's sit down and learn these songs. And then I showed up, and it was very apparent I was the only one who did it. And it was the most deflating thing I'd felt in a long time, because it felt like I wasted the time that I'd spent preparing. And guess what happened the next time they invited me to play bass? It wasn't as simple as I just said no. It's like I said yes because I was already going to be there, but I didn't practice because there was an expectation set of, well, nobody else is practicing, so why should I practice? And when we're saying I'm going to spend time prior to rehearsal to learn my instrument, learn my parts, that's not just saying, oh, I'm comfortable to play this set now. It's also honoring the other people who are going to be there that week. Because when David shows up and he knows how the drums go, that helps me as a worship leader. Because it's like, okay, I'm not having to remember to point where things go. It's like it takes that off of me. And so now I'm able to have more of my mind clear, so that if somebody else needs a sense of direction, I'm free to give that to them. And so just like by almost the same way that we talked about how showing up a little bit late to call time can kind of like multiply itself, when one person or multiple people show up prepared, that also multiplies, because it makes it easy. It's just a little bit easier on everybody. And so those are spiritual reasons for why we do rehearsal. And now we're going into the very practical side, which is, what does it actually look like to practice prior to rehearsal? So the main thing that we want to focus on is we're focusing on what is relevant to the role of our instrument in a worship music context. We're not just casually listening to the songs and jamming with them. We're doing this as a way to prepare for that coming Sunday. So if you're an acoustic guitar player, some things that are helpful to know is, what are the chord progressions? What is the rhythm that the acoustic is playing? Is it, oh, glorious day, is it like that? Or is it, maybe like a light picking part where you're just like sort of gliding over it with your thumb a little bit? Like basically, what is the energy level for the acoustic? And even doing something as simple as listening to a song and saying, what are the chords and when is it high energy and when is it low energy. Most of the time for acoustics and worship stuff, that is all you need to basically get the full scope of the song. Are we playing this in the right key? Yeah, getting that. Also, another thing, I didn't get this in the slides, but it did occur to me this week. So part of something that me and Jonathan are trying to be really intentional about is when we schedule songs on Planning Center, we are updating the playlist on Spotify that's the it's the one that's linked on the church's Facebook, where it's like the Sunday worship service. We are trying to be very intentional about updating those so that if you guys want to listen to them during the week or practice along with them on Spotify, you have that there. Also for people who are doing slides, if you just want to like casually listen to them. So this is me publicly saying it now. If you are scheduled for that week and Tuesday night passes and you wake up on Wednesday and the songs are not updated on either Planning Center or that playlist, you have the right to bug whoever is scheduled for leading worship that week until they update them. Because yes, I think you just led recently, so I don't think you had that. We need a collab invite. So again, exceptions. Merrick literally didn't know that was a thing until I just told her right now. So yeah, I think I'll send you like the collab invite. But so yeah, it is not just an expectation on you, it is also on the worship leaders. So if you're like, hey, it's Thursday morning and the songs are not up, you do not need to feel badly about not being able to get your practice time in, because literally you were not able to. But yeah, so if you're doing anything on piano, similar to guitar, learning chord progressions, but then also like rhythm and registers. So just like, are you playing down, 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 or is it dun 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 dun? I thought I was gonna have like a better vocal example, but essentially, how fast are you playing, and sort of like what register are you in? Are you playing like really low, chunky chords that are taking up a lot of low end, or are you playing like really light, high stuff? Again, the more you think of these in terms of, I just got called out for not having the microphone close enough, but it doesn't matter because we're recording it. And but yeah, so when you're going through practice, focus on like 2 or 3 of these elements, and you'll be in a pretty good position. If you're an auxiliary instrument, we're looking to see relevant lead lines of the song and knowledge when to come in and out. And again, it's kind of hard to give specifics, examples, just because normally auxiliary instrument, if we had electric guitar players here, I would probably tell them the same thing. It's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what to do because most songs don't have a flute track or a mandolin track, or but what I would say is if you're listening to a song and there's like a melody that like you're humming to, like an instrumental melody, so like I'll Fly Away, and if you're listening to somebody play I'll Fly Away, Oh Glory, and the song starts out with a banjo going, so that is like a melody line that would probably be like helpful to learn. So just figuring that out, and then listening to the song and be like, okay, when are points I can come in? When are points that I should probably die down? Those are always really helpful. Vocalists, what harmony will you be singing and when will you be singing it? Again, this is kind of hard to pre-plan prior to practice because it's going to depend a lot on who is leading vocally and what kind of arrangement they have decided. So it's definitely going to be a large part of collaborating on Thursday. But I would say it'd be helpful for you to, at the very least, spend some time like, okay, what are the lyrics? How does the general melody go when they say, oh, why don't you take the the lead line on verse 2, like know what verse 2 is. So again, there's just focus on things that will help you feel more prepared for practice. Bass players have it pretty easy. It's play the root note of whatever chord is being played, and then either keep playing it or stop playing it at certain points in the song. Worship bass is the easiest thing on planet Earth, and I love it. And I wish I played it more. But drums, we're looking at sort of overall vibe of beats / energy section to section. So in knowing, okay, verse 1 is quiet, pre-chorus is a little bit louder and it's building, and then at the end, when we get chorus 1, it dies down to nothing. So just understanding the arrangement of how the song kind of flows with energy, and then listening to, are there like specific beats to this song that are like really recognizable that like people might want me to play? So like when I was a young teenager playing drums, my worship leader loved Mighty to Save like too much, because that I played that probably 50,000 times in like 2 years. But it was one of those things where it's like I kind of had to learn it, because like that is like the part of the song where they're just like, and just the drums. And it's like specifically with that song, that's like the one recognizable part where people are like, yeah, that part. And so, and they scream exactly that out loud. But so yeah, very rarely do you have like parts like that. But if you know the song and we're like, okay, Reckless Love is like boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. Just like anything like that is helpful to learn. In closing, just to reiterate, when we're going through all this stuff, this is not like singling out one person or saying that anybody has done anything wrong. This is for all of us in the ministry, including me. Like, as I was putting this together at Electric Coffee this morning at like 6 a.m., I was like, I need to be doing some of this more. I need to be more on top of this, or like making sure other things are valued, and making sure that other people in the team are being valued. Similar to what we were talking about before, we are talking about excellence over performance or perfection. If you have brought your all, I really see this kind of contradicts everything I've just said for the past hour, but I really don't care about what the results are on some level. But like, if you have brought your full heart forward and you've done all this stuff and it's still just one of those weeks where something went wrong, David's like, last week, I care so much more for the hearts of everybody in this ministry than the actual, like, well, does this sound like it would be on an album on Hillsong? It's like, I could care less. Actually, isn't it? I couldn't care less, technically. Okay. I threw that out because I knew Merrick would answer it. But, yeah, I believe that is everything. Covered that. So, that's all that we have, like, prepared. If there's any questions or anything like that, I'd love to answer them now.